Thank you for having me.
Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this program is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, New York, and also coming to you from Woodstock, and also coming to you from YouTube. And we have a brand new guest this evening, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
My name is Mark Usvolk. It's like used Volkswagen. It's Lithuanian. My great-grandfather was a rabbi in Lithuania, and I got a lot of flack for having a name like Usvolk. I mean, people see it and they just immediately freeze up. So I had to get comfortable with mispronunciations at an early stage, and I think it helped form my character.
And you are here this evening for the first time.
Yes, I am.
And how is that going?
How's it going so far? You and I had a really interesting conversation in just like little snippets, and opened up a lot of different doors, and I hope we can kind of go back into those.
Continue with it, yes. And you brought a flyer.
Yeah, I did.
Tell me about Lydias Cafe.
Well, you want the long version or the short version?
Either one. Both.
All right. We're in, my wife Ronnie and I bought this cafe from her mother back in, I'd say, like 2006. She had a little cafe. It wasn't even a cafe. It was like a little deli in Stoneridge. And it was just this rundown little place. And they were killing it. I mean, like Sundays, people were lined up outside, and they'd sell like, 12 dozen bagels and 40 New York Times, but it was like horrible. I mean, the place was, we walked in and, drywall is hanging down from the ceiling and the garbage is like right out front and everything, but it was really popular. And so Ronnie and I got the brilliant idea of buying this from her mother and fixing it up. And the idea, this was back when the banks were just handing out money. They didn't care. You didn't have to qualify. They just said, sure, you want money? How much do you want? So we borrowed a bunch of money, and neither one of us had any income. We were living in Tucson. I was a working musician, and I was practicing architecture, and Ronnie was doing insurance. She had a nice, solid job, and we saved up a little bit of money. And we thought it would be a good idea to like pick up from our idyllic life in Tucson and drive to New York and like live in her mother's basement and build. I was building an $800,000 spec home out there every day, framing, trying, I did the design. I was out there working all winter long, and concurrently we're fixing up the cottage, which is right next door, which is where she and I live currently. And we renovating the deli at the time. That was an experience. I'll tell you, I just turned 50, and you don't know how much you can take until you actually put yourself under a situation. I can't tell you how much stress, and in terms of like losing sleep and trying to figure, and I'm trying to, solve all sorts of problems. There's a lot of math involved in designing and building a house, and there's a lot of communication, and there's a lot of dysfunctioning people that you're dealing with. The workforce there's remarkable stories about some of the people, and I found that, I know I'm getting away from, you said the long story, so this is the long story. I'm just giving you a little bit of background here. What I kind of learned during that process, I learned a lot of things, but one of the things that I learned is sometimes you just reach to a point when your mind, it almost like makes a choice whether you're just gonna like lose it and just totally buckle, or whether you're gonna just see it differently. And all of a sudden it like turns upside down, and it's like, who cares? It's like you just let it go, you let it pass through you.
That's how you succeed.
Well, that's how yeah, and I think that's part of that success. I mean, that's one of the reasons, that's one of the justifications for sticking with Lydias after all these years. is because of, because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of nakas, you know, there's a lot of pleasure, but, you know, it's both a curse and a blessing, depending on how you perceive it. And what I find is situations where you really have to, you know, get it together, or not. You know, I mean, there are times where you think you put all the pieces together, like we're doing music every Saturday night, and we get some of the best musicians in the world. I'm not kidding. I'll tell you some of the people. Just tomorrow from Woodstock, here's my plug, David Gilmour Quartet. If you guys are into music, you'll recognize these people. David Gilmour on guitar, Tyler Blanton on vibraphone, Carlo Rosa on bass, and believe it or not, Ben Porowski on drums. I mean, there's not a better drummer on the planet. All these guys are like top shelf. That's another reason I stick with Lydias, because we get like really great musicians. But part of the, I don't want to say just the justification, part of the hidden treasures and not only having a venue like this, but also just the opportunity to like meet people, observe human behavior, to try to orchestrate the night in such a way that it's fulfilling and it's joyful. And I find that in itself, just the practice of that, is enriching. It's enriching to me, and I hope the people around. Anyway, so Ronnie and I thought we would like come and just do this crazy deal. And so the first thing we did is we fixed up Lydias Cafe, and it was horrible. I mean, it was really ridiculous. It was embarrassing. Cobwebs and everything. So Ronnie and I rolled up our sleeves, and we cleaned the place up and patched everything. We moved the dumpster off and put in a patio. And Willem Dafoe, who lives right down the road, he said, I wrote a scene here because this place was so run down. And he goes, you've ruined my scene.
Okay.
And so he said, well, we I can make it look bad, you know. Please, Mr. Dafoe, you know, shoot your movie. So they ended up, Ronnie ended up catering for the movie crew for a month. And I mean, she'd never cooked professionally before. I mean, it's like sink or swim. And God bless her, she knocked it out of the park. I mean, these guys, we'd serve 2 meals a day, and it could be at any time, and she'd have to put it together. So that was kind of like a trial by fire. So we were open like 7 days a week, from like 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. And then we were doing live music every Saturday. And, you know, and I'm trying to play. I mean, I'm you know, of course it's my place, you know, so I'm booking myself and I'm hiring like really great players. And so now I'm you know, stressing about that, about not, you know, making a fool of myself on stage, you know, and then, you know, 2 days later you got to go back on the job site and like deal with, you know, drunks and non-functional human beings and all the weird stuff. And I find that there's just like a space, there's like I'll call it the interstitial space. It's a space like right in between things, like think of it as the Venn diagram space. I call it the thin Venn sliver. And, you know, it's occupying that space and I find that like in the midst of conflict and something that it's really difficult to reconcile in terms of, you know, why am I doing it? You know, what is the payoff? Lydias, for example, we've lost money every year, you know. So I have to consider what is the sacrifice, and is the sacrifice worth it? And that's when I find that's when you find that space, when you find that interstitial space. And into that space, I mean, that's where we bring our gifts, our beauty, you know, our intent, you know, when we meet people. You can just shut me up at any time.
Well, you did say something that I think is very interesting. You've mentioned twice dysfunctional people when you were fixing up Lydias and building on the house. My eldest daughter bought a house in New Baltimore, and she lives by herself, and she's 59, and she's an artist, but she was recently in a car wreck, so she's not real good with hands and feet and ankles, so there's a lot she can't do. So she's hiring people. And she is meeting these people. There is a book there. There is a play.
Oh my
There
God.
is an opera. There is a TV show,
Oh, yeah.
a sitcom.
Oh, yeah. There used to be there's a fine home building, and at the back, people would put in humorous stories about, job events. I could tell you story. It was too much to get into here unless it was illustrating another point. But that was like an early taste of like how you deal with people. Not only are that don't. They function on a different level than we're used to, and that's not just in terms of functionality, it's also in terms of ethically, and pride of workmanship or lack thereof. There's just I found that it was so eye-opening for me to work with people and try to work with people that were so off from the way that I would normally interact with people or treat people, the degree of trust, all these things that you would like to think that everybody shares, and that's what I mean. Not only that, but then there was just some crazy stuff. I want to tell you the story, but I want to get back to the other point, unless.
Well,
you want to get into
I was impressed by that. Also, this is such an interesting area because it's Stoneridge, and
Yeah.
then it's not long until you get to Accord, and then you get into Shandaken. And I can see by the colors of the buildings that a lot of people, you came from Tucson and you really came back home. But a lot of people, of course, came up from the pandemic. And they're trying to rebuild because there are a lot of people in this area, and I do not mean to be critical, but it's real, who bought a house and lived in it for X number of years. And it just sort of slowly crumbled. And then all of a sudden the pandemic came and they began to sell these places. Mm-hmm. So then you have people who have come up from wherever they came up from and bought the place and then realized that they had to rebuild it. And so then they're having these experiences with rebuilding their homes. And they've got the culture shock, and they're rebuilding their homes. And we may be speaking English, but when you start getting somebody to paint your home or do a plumbing job or something, all of a sudden you're speaking English, but they're speaking a different English.
Okay. All right. So if you don't mind, let's take that phenomenon and let me tie it into
Sure.
like Lydias or something else, because and I know this is a political show and I don't want to open this gate, but if I'm speaking to somebody and I find out like they're a Trump supporter, you all of a sudden realize that there's certain avenues of reaching that person that may not be the best use of your time, like agreeing on what reality is.
Yes.
So,
okay.
And I did this with my own brother, who I just love, and you go, okay, that means of connection is treacherous. And so then, but no, I want to, I love my brother, and so then, and I'm just using Scotty as an example. I mean, and not just Trump supporters, but somebody who you're not in the same frequency.
Well, I don't think what
so,
you just said was critical at all.
Or well, let me finish.
I think it was delightful.
Well, let me finish my thinking on this thing, and so I tell myself, well, logic and reason, I've tuned that back, and so, but what I found that the opportunity is, and it's to reach deeper and just like love or compassion or understanding or just listening, and that's another unique thing. I just want to tie this ribbon up here. So another neat thing about owning Lydia is during the daytime it's mainly blue collar, and Saturday nights it's like New York, hip savvy people, and I can't treat anybody differently than the other person. I can't talk to anybody. It just doesn't feel right. I treat everybody the same. I talk to everybody the same. I give everybody the same respect. And I always bring an attitude of goodwill and friendship, the offer of friendship. I try. And then it doesn't matter what the ideology is, because you find the commonality. You find that Vince. We had a woman that used to work for us. Her name's Carlina. And I like to tell this story, because it illustrates this point. And it does relate to, even connecting with people on the job site who are just like on a different planet. There's still an opportunity to connect on them on, a deeper level, humanistic level, just respect, just looking at somebody, just listening to what they say, and don't make fun of them. And, if you can, you make them feel better about themselves. You give them a chance to articulate their thoughts, and you give them validation. And so this woman, Carlina, worked for us, and she grew up in hard times. And I'm amazed that she turned out to be such a beautiful, bright spirit that she is, just loving without asking for anything in return. And, she was just remarkable. And so she died. She went for a routine dentist thing, and she went brain dead, and so she lingered for a while and died. And we had a memorial service for her. And we had a PA set up, and her daughter asked me to speak. And I remember thinking, I'm looking in the crowd, and it's like 90% like Trump supporters, people with skinhead T-shirts and stuff like that. And I'm saying to myself, I'm going to address this crowd, and there's like 100 people there or something. And, and I said, well, first thing, don't be so judgmental, A, and then B, as I was talking to everybody, and, everybody's connecting with that same thing, that capacity of love that she had. So when I'm talking to the crowd, I went back to my famous, my analogy. I said, well, we all have different spheres of consciousness and reality, politically or, as individuals. And I said, but, where those cross over in that Vince, and this is where Carlina, this is the space that she inhabits, and everybody can relate to that. It doesn't matter how, we disagree about, politics all day long, but everybody responded to that. And that's what I mean, that's that opportunity. I mean, you have a voice, you have an audience, you have that responsibility. I have that responsibility as a venue owner. This is the message. And looking for opportunities to express that. And I find, especially when it's difficult, like trying to come to a commonality, an agreement with somebody that you disagree with, that you just don't see on the same wavelength. I think, this is part of the skill and part of the talent that we learn. This is an evolving theory of mine that's getting more and more resonance. Is just like, everybody has a vibration. It's something that, is below the level of conscious understanding, but on a molecular level, there's a resonation. If you're into chakras, if you're into it's analogous to a lot of different things. We can talk about the musical overtone series, we can talk about the energy and so forth, the movement of that. And I find that energies can be moved in subtle ways. So let's say, for example, somebody walks in off the street, they just drove up, from New York City, and they're anxious, and they had a fight with their wife, and they're walking into this environment, Lydias Cafe, live music every Saturday night. My wife's an excellent cook. The duck is the best in town. We promote conversation. So people walk in, and, this is a strange environment. They don't know how to act. And I meet everybody at the door. And this is another one of these little blessings that I'm talking about. I greet everyone with it doesn't matter what kind of day I've had, how crappy my day was. When I assume the role of host, I bring my best. I bring a smile. I bring, and sincerity. And what I find happens is you resonate. And you're able to, you feel out the other person's resonation. Maybe they're a little tense. Maybe they're resonating up here. I find you tune into that, and then you can put it. You can help. You can maybe get rid of some of the extra overtones that don't belong. You just get down to the basic stuff, like a smile, like how are you? Nice to meet you. Let's be friends. And then all of a sudden, people are resonating from the fundamental frequencies. And then from there, they manifest themselves up. And pretty soon, you're talking and you're sharing stories, and there's this commonality, and now there's emotion involved, now the heart is part of it. So now the heart is resonating, And then you get into the voice, and now this is resonating, and you're communicating. And the same thing happens when we listen to music. You know, we respond to music on all these different levels. You know, you come in, the band is grooving, you know, your body's responding. This is vibrating, right? You listen to the vocalist, and you know that song, and now there's emotion involved. So now this is resonating. And then you get up, and and if you understand the language of music, and particularly with jazz, I mean, there's some really interesting stuff going on in there, particularly with the levels that we get. And if you listen to the conversations, there's some really, really beautiful things, and there's a lot of subtlety. So now these frequencies are resonating. You know, and what happens is, like, once people start resonating on multiple levels, they feel fulfilled, they open up, things start to flow, they let go of their inhibitions. And so it's like tuning each individual as they come in. And people have to be willing to go there, and I think part of our job as hosts is making them feel comfortable. You know, if you want to be crazy, you know, if you want to express yourself, you know, by all means,
help yourself, enjoy it. Well, I think for some people who come up here, it's the music helps.
Helps what?
The Hudson Valley helps. I think because it's such a culture shock to come up here in ways that people never really thought about.
Culture, which way? The lack of or the abundance?
No, I guess the environmental. The water smells in the Hudson Valley because it is alive. And sometimes people have lived 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years and never smelled water.
Your point being?
That this is something that they're unprepared for. It's very subtle, but it's something that they're unprepared
Well,
for.
then it's a question of, like, how they adapt.
Right.
You know, and that's you know, I think that's part of the opportunity that we have to. I don't say give people those tools, but give people an opportunity to practice adaptation.
Yeah.
You know, for example, when they walk into Lydias, or when you're having a conflict with somebody on the job site. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's that ability to be able to adapt. I think it's a muscle you have
And
to
to
use.
understand.
And and just the willingness to do it. That's another part of the thing. You know, our social aspect. You know, and this hasn't been an ongoing thing. To try to give people an opportunity to be able to, well, I can tell you about some of the things, but, you know, express themselves, connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, I was thinking about this on the way over, you know, like in the course of an evening, you know, you look out and everybody, you know, listening to music, and, you know, everybody's sharing a smile and a laugh and a commonality, and it's like, that forms like a resonance.
That helps.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so people, you know, the world impresses itself upon us in a lot of different ways. You know,
Well, but you're in a very interesting place out here in Stoneridge. A lot of people came up and they went to Kingston, or they went to Beacon, or they went to Poughkeepsie, or whatever, and it's more comfortable for them. And all of a sudden, when they come out to Stoneridge and Accord, they're in the sticks. You know? And I had, you know, like the trees can freak people out. You know?
well, presumably they come here to learn.
Well, but they may be coming here to learn on this level, but they didn't say to themselves, hey, Martha, let's move up here. It's the pandemic. Let's go up to the Hudson Valley and learn. That's not what they said. I don't think. And we've got this housing crisis out here. And you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to talk about. You know, if you want to talk about the housing crisis, we can do that. Or, you know, I mean, I was trying to, like,
You're doing,
a
but
narrative
we
here,
also, there is the reality out here of this new, the new vibration.
Okay, so let's talk about how to integrate that then, and that's what I'm trying to speak to. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we could be talking about. I'm trying to frame the conversation in terms of something that you're obviously trying to flesh out a point.
I'm just going with you. I am impressed with you're coming on the air and you're from Stoneridge, and you came here from Tucson.
I'm from Dallas, by the way. I understand you're a fellow Texan.
I don't discuss that.
I typically.
That is,
Well, then you should change your accent because your accent.
tried. It's like LBJ. He had a bunch of people that were giving him classes, ditching classes. Poor things. It was difficult. It was challenging. They lost. They failed. He failed. I'm in the same situation. So when people bring up Texas, I just don't mention it. We don't talk about it.
I just mentioned it in passing.
No, we just don't. We just right here, right there, and then we just do this with it, cover it
So
up.
yes, I've lived in Dallas. I've lived in Tucson. We've been going back and forth between here and Tucson for a number of years. We finally decided we sold our house in Tucson.
You like the trees?
I like the trees. I think the people are more engaging. I like the opportunity to, to kibitz and to, I find that New Yorkers, they're typically, it's in comparison to like Texas and Arizona, you can discuss stuff. I mean, they're not as shy. They're not as reticent about sharing their ideas. And I find that's refreshing. I find that we can get into some really interesting conversations.
Well,
and I enjoy people here. I enjoy the.
I think this is there's a really beautiful experience going on out here that I'm not really sure that a lot at are aware of it.
Well, they should come to Lydia's because that's.
That's where it's at.
I assume that's why you said that, right?
Yeah.
Well, we try to, we're civic-minded people, and we try to create an environment, where people can express themselves, grow, have some pleasure, come together. We most of us, to some greater or lesser degree, we're looking for division. We're looking for things to gripe about. And,
That's good.
well, it's good to an extent, but I think there's a time when that's part of the conversation, and there's a time when it can be dialed back. My point being is that unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that's being practiced right now is looking for division, looking for conflict, and I'm trying really personally very hard to create a different dialogue, to look for an opportunity for consensus and agreement. And so, if you look for dissension, if you look for argument, you're going to find it. If you look for joy, if you look for commonality and friendship, you're going to find that too. And it's all about the practice. I mean, I really don't care what the ideology is. I don't care what the religion is. It's all about the practice. It's, and what you bring to the practice, what you deem worthy. Which, you know what I'm saying? Like what you bring to the altar. What you bring to the altar of however you want to characterize it, God or...
So, what you're saying is that some of the people come out because it's, criticism can also be a habit.
Very much so. I think it's about practiced behavior.
Right. And you talked about the different energy, the energy can kind of get stuck there.
That's a big problem right there. And that's a key thing right there. And that happens, that's when disease begins, when things get stuck. And the same thing happens with ideology and the way that we act. And by not taking risks, by not practicing self-expression, by not practicing your imagination, by not, these things become dormant and they become alien to us. And it ceases to be it ceases to be important to us. We don't look for opportunities to practice. That's another reason we're doing what we're doing. I find that on some degree people have to be provoked. We're all complacent, and particularly when we get into our age group. I mean, we got this going for us and against us. We got great music, but a lot of the people that come out are older, my age, whatever, 60 and up. And you just get tired, you get lazy, and it's hard to engage them. I mean, I've had all sorts of different things, which I thought would just be, people would just show up in droves, just the opportunity to get together and do a social event. And we had schmooze and booze.
That sounds cute.
Oh, it was cute. And we had, this is a different group, but I had the Philosophers Forum, which was really cool. It's kind of a fun reason, we'd sit
When
around.
you say you had the Philosophers Forum, did you have something happening every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock for 6 weeks, or was this something you had every night, or what was the?
Well, it's different.
One time?
The music we've been doing pretty much consistently every Saturday. It's probably like 90% jazz now, with other like dance things and Latin things thrown in. I know it's a poor business choice, but I just really like jazz, and I like really good players. So
If you like it, then maybe it's not such a poor business choice.
well, it's part in terms of our the fact that we can't pack that, we can't fill a 50 seat room, and we lose money. I'm not even gonna tell you how much we've lost. It's successful in some respects, and when I say I qualify that by saying it's a poor business model. So from a business point of view, it's like the stupidest thing that we could possibly do. I mean, I could tell you 50 other things that we could do, and we would be really doing much better. We could be doing, if we did country, if we did rock, if we did comedy, if we did drag shows, and we've done a lot of different things. We used to do drag shows. They're incredibly popular. It was the most popular thing we've ever done.
Really?
Oh my God. People came out and had fun. We had a comics night, which is real cool. I may do that again. My doctor's encouraging me to have every Friday night comedy night, which I think is a really good idea. I have to factor in how my wife is going to, she didn't want to be drawn in any deeper than she already is. But there are 100 different things that we could do. But we've done a lot of these things, and we tried things on a consistent basis. To answer your question, we did the first Friday of every month for LGBTQ, whatever, and we did that I committed 4 months of that, and all these things are social experiments. I'll tell you that, and I'll tell you another one which I think is interesting. But this is one of the things that troubles me the most, and I think it's also one of the things that's incentivized me the most to stick with this, is just figuring this out. Because on so many different levels, not only the promotion thing, getting into Facebook and doing graphic arts and all these things. I mean, that's a whole thing in itself, and trying to be disciplined. But just in terms of reaching people and enticing people to come out, and that's a lot of it. And I think in a situation like a drag show, people don't have to overthink it. They can come and they can have a good time.
What do you do on Sunday mornings?
Sleep. No, actually, I watch Freed Zakaria and CNN.
So you're not offering...
Me personally, no, it's open. I mean, all right, so Ronnie and I ran this thing for many years. Last year, it's been almost exactly a year, her brother Wesley took over the day business.
Oh.
So he's doing breakfast and lunch every day but Monday from 7 until 2. Wesley, God bless him. I mean, the guy's working his butt off, and he's got a family, and he's really, he was one of those dysfunctional people on my job site I was talking about. He had his problems. And, to see him, that's weird when that happens to me.
Does
To see him become the man he is.
does he have like a show on Sunday morning?
What?
Right. Does he have like a poetry reading?
No, Wesley is just trying to crank out the breakfast and lunches.
He's just cooking breakfast.
He's just cooking his butt off. I mean, this guy, you know, he cooked for us for many years. You know, I mean, he's at Mohawk. You know, he is really good. I mean, the breakfast and lunch at Lydia's are amazing. If you've never eaten there, I defy you not to walk away and not give us a good review. No, it's all fresh. I mean, he's a really good chef or cook. Prices are good. The quantities are good. The vibe is good, and he's doing okay. You know. So anyway, so he's running the day business. So no, he's not doing any frills. I mean,
So he's the chef.
Yeah, he's a cook. You know, but whatever you want to. But he's good, and so he's trying to keep it together. And Ronnie's brother George just moved here from China, and married Chester. And so they're both working for Wesley, and it's a whole family thing. You know, Ronnie's over there just like helping out. It's all in the same compound. You know, it's Lydia's, and then we have a cottage just to the right of that, and in the back we have an Airbnb, which is like really beautiful, 5-star reviews. And on good weather, and we've had that's few and far between on Saturdays. We move outside, and we've converted the outdoor space into an outdoor venue, an outdoor patio. We did that during COVID out of necessity, and we bitched and moaned the whole time. It was a lot of work. We had to haul all the tables and chairs out, all the food out, and then at the end of the night we had to haul it all back in. But it was successful. So this time I just built a bunch of modular collapsible furniture, tables and chairs. So it's much easier. So when the weather becomes nice, we'll be outside under the stars, and you'll be on our lawn, and you can eat great food, duck, salmon. We're doing duck, salmon, and fried chicken from the kitchen, vastly scaled down. We used to do everything. We had an amazing, Ronnie was the cook, for the chef. Amazing baker too, cakes, wedding cakes, all this stuff. Go to our website, Lydias Cafe.com. Can I do that?
Of course.
Too bad. All right. So weather permitting, we go outside. The food's great. We're friendly. The music is unbelievable. This. Unless you give me a compelling reason not to say this, it's really interesting because, particularly when we're indoors, like half the people are like really into listening to the music, and half the people are not. They're into like talking. I understand like you're sitting with somebody, and having a conversation. It's like, would you ask the band to turn down? And you can imagine. I mean, if it's just like like regular guys, they just get together on weekends, it's one thing. But like we got like heavy players coming from New York City. I mean, like famous people. And half the audience is like talking about motors, whatever they talk about, fishing and stuff. And it's been I could tell you some stories. So we're trying to please everybody, which is impossible. So what I do is you kind of feel out the crowd. You can usually tell if it's a Let me say this, that most of the people that we get in Lydia's on Saturday nights are kind of people that are a little bit more accomplished. We have I don't want to say that they're more intelligent, but they're more socially adept, and they enjoy so there's a lot to begin with. There's a lot of commonality and all walks of life. We get lawyers, we get artists, we get musicians, whatever. So generally speaking, those avenues are kind of open, so people can kind of be less guarded. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're from the same tribe. We subscribe to the same political philosophies. So we're buddies. Yeah. So there's that congeniality, and then I also have to. It's important for me as host to also set an example, and to be goofy, if it calls for it, to be relaxed, but just to kind of signal that it's okay to go up and have a conversation. I introduce people all the time, and it's amazing when people start talking to one another, the commonality. And it's not just among our tribe. The same thing is true, if I'm talking to the construction guys, you start talking. I mean, I teach roof framing, I've got I got stuff to talk about with them, but a lot of times it's just making the effort. Pretty soon, there's 6 degrees of separation become like 2 degrees of separation, and you make a new friend. Maybe not somebody you want to go out drinking with, but somebody that you're going to say hello to on the street. And I always consider that a value, not only to myself, but to them as well. So that's kind of like our purview. That's kind of like our mission. I don't know how well we do, but you set in that direction.
Well, my feeling is that your challenges are, you have the music and you have the food and you have the the environment, you have the
vibe,
ambiance, but what you don't have is the crowds. There are so few people out there, and they are so different.
Well, this is the calculation. I understand that, just in terms of numbers, if we start, well, let's just start with jazz. All of a sudden you're down to 5% of people that are, going to really be hip to jazz, that they're going to go out of their way for it. You're the musician, and they don't come out to Lydias because they're all gigging or who knows why. Or somebody older who really digs. So I know right off the bat we have all, we have the odds working against us. I understand that, and I've accepted it. I may change at the end of the season. We're booked through the end of the year, pretty much, through November. And these guys, I wouldn't, sometimes I think about just canning it, just shutting it down and say to hell with it. But I know that would be foolish of me, and besides, I couldn't call these guys and say, sorry, your gig's been canceled because, my feelings are hurt because people aren't coming out.
But you have an obligation, I feel, when you open a place, a cafe, a restaurant, a bar, whatever, a place to eat and to gather in a community such as the one where Lydias is, you have a different obligation.
What do you mean?
In Kingston, you go to uptown Kingston, you open the doors and the people come, they all come in. You don't have that many people, but that doesn't mean that they don't need and deserve a lovely meal and music. And I'm using the word obligation, it's probably the wrong word.
I understand what you mean.
But you are providing that.
Well, we're providing that, and I feel we're also providing some other functions that are important not only for us, but I think because, I've never been connected to a community before. I never really, I've traveled, I've done a lot, lived in all different places. I've never had the affinity that I do here.
Do you feel like you're connected to your community here?
Yeah, people that I've met. Yeah, I think I've made a lot of friends. But it's more beyond that. It's more than just civic responsibility. Well, part of it's civic responsibility, and I think part of that civic responsibility is what I've talked about earlier, just like bringing a message of friendship and harmony and peace if we can. I feel, you start with that. We're gonna fall short. That's a given. But as long as we start from that, as long as we practice that, I'd like for it to work. I'd like for it to resonate. But just selfishly, for me to have the opportunity to practice that, that's going to make me a better man. You know what I mean? That's going to allow me to resonate in that center that that I try to reach. You know, I mean, it's all like, how do we reach that center? Let's go back to that just for a second, because we have a short time, and I just want to talk about the important stuff to me, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
You know, like how we get into that resonant core, and how we find that, and how we bring in more resonance to it. Now, I'm going to just get. You have to forgive me. This is a rare opportunity for me to speak openly about these things, and I'd like to get just a little metaphysical here. For me, I'll speak for myself, but I'm also using as a background my understanding of music. I have a degree in music from North Texas. I've got practice. I'm a good player. I'm a better composer. I practice architecture. I taught myself. I have a deep knowledge of a 3D modeling program called Revit, which is amazing. I mean, you can do anything. It's just, I have a series called Velociraptor, which teaches roof framing and mathematics, so forth. So she's still rolling, or she cut off?
Oh no, she's working.
And then there's what I'll call I don't call it my spiritual practice, but my time trying to dwell in what I think of as like my higher state of consciousness. And I find that all of those things that I mentioned and more, they're different disciplines. They require different tools, but there's so many similarities. There's structural similarities. There are ways that we learn to use those tools. And I think the point that I want to talk about here is it doesn't really matter what the discipline is. It's practicing a state of mind, a state of consciousness. And I'm going to bring it back to this. I know I'm using this a lot, this Zen Center, but think about if any of you have ever done lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is you're asleep, you're in a state of deep subconscious, but you have an awareness that you're sleeping, that you're dreaming, and so you have more of a conscious awareness of that. And so and I think of, again, those things, it's like I'm oversimplifying, but you think of the subconscious state, and then you think of the conscious state, and in between, that's the lucid state. And within that state of mind, and at least in dreaming, I mean, I can do anything I want. I can fly, I can compose music, it's miraculous. That a similar state of mind or of consciousness exists all around us. And my discipline, for example, playing music, I just want to describe this. I've learned the theory, I can do the math, there's that part of my brain that's, it's still learning, but it's fairly well disciplined. It's like with a language, you learn, you don't have to think about the syntax, how the words are going together. It's, it allows you to speak. So, but there's that part of our brain, the analytical, and then there's the part of our brain which is open to the imagination, to, equated to the subconscious state or whatever, or superconscious state. So the trick is you finding the place where those two overlap, at that interstitial space. And when you're in that stage, like musically, you're listening to wherever your inspiration comes from, but we think of it as like our inner voice, our inner ear. And then the technical side, the processing side, it's kind of tuned down a little bit. It's all about balancing. That's what happens. Sometimes like when you're really like when you're doing math, we're skewed more towards the analytical, right? When we're just like, getting crazy or getting stoned or whatever, you're more into that, intuitive side. So the trick is to merge those two, to find that state, and it's like it's balance. You drift in and out. But the same thing is true with everything. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm doing architecture stuff. If I get a vision, I kind of step out of the way. I let it play itself out, and then I go through it again. This is like, in bed, going to sleep. Rather than getting up and going to the computer and trying to figure out how to do it, I go through it again. And with more detail. And what I find happens is you bring it into your closer consciousness and you start giving more detail. And so now you're when I say you, I'm speaking for myself, my retention is really good. I mean, I can go to sleep and then get up the next morning and recreate it. It's not so good with me with music. Like once I hear something, you know, it's. But it's again that state of mind to where I'm out of the way. I'm watching, my ego's out of the way. I'm watching this thing, the building take shape, or hearing the music. But I'm observing it enough. I'm giving it enough conscious attention to where I can remember. How, in the dream state, in the lucid dream state, what I find is like, if I try too hard, if I try to push it too much, I wake up. You upset the balance. So you're keeping this delicate balance. Same thing happens on the bandstand, you know. All of a sudden you start getting, you know, freaked out, or somebody's not grooving or playing the right chain, whatever it is, and you throw you off. It's like kind of, you know, awakening from the lucid dream state. Not that you can't get it back in, but so the point that I'm making is in all these different, and it's not just these two things, it's like in everything. Like talking to another person, particularly when you're having like a conflict with someone. We were talking about that earlier. I mean, these are two opposing things. These are different, you know, realms of consciousness, right? And the secret, you know, I mean, the place, that lucid state, that Vin space, that state of, you know, however you want to characterize it, you know, I think of it as a blessed state. You know, that's where we go. That's what all these things that we practice, all these art forms. I mean, to me, this is practice getting there. You know, I'm just going to keep talking, if you don't mind. I had heart surgery like 7 years ago. I learned some really important stuff. I'll indirectly tie it to what I was talking about, but I this short window, so I just want to say my piece with your permission here.
Sure.
Something like that will really focus your attention. You know what matters, and for me, it was learning to achieve a state of peace, to be able to go there, because I knew I was going to be dealing with pain. I knew I was going to be dealing with discomfort, and you know, the possibility of dying, and all the other weird emotional stuff that goes into that. So I began a practice, and I still continue it. And you know, pain is just a sensation. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad sensation. You know, next time you go for a walk and it's cold, you know, and you think, you know, ooh, you know, look what happens. You know, your body tenses up, and this is unpleasant. It's outside of, you know, my normal range of comfort, right? And we make the associations, and what I found that I needed to learn to do would be to think of pain or discomfort or dissension or conflict. It's just different sensation. So what I found happens is, like, when you're dealing with pain, we practice. We were talking about this earlier. It's a practiced response. Look what happens. You become tense. Your muscles become constricted. You know, your ideas become constricted. It's more protective. If it happens on the bandstand and you feel threatened or whatever, you're not creative. You're not taking chances. Your muscles are tight. You know, and I find what happens is if that's practiced behavior, then that becomes your default state. That's where you go. And when you're trying to like deal with pain and stuff like that, that's not where you want your training to be. You want your training to be able to go, let it pass, you know. And so I found it's one thing to think on those terms, and it's a great idea, but how do you actually integrate that into your body? How do you actually retrain your body to respond differently, and your ideologies to respond? And I found that it's, you know, a lot of it is just the practice. A lot of it is just like looking for ways to do it, but small things. I think like probably my first exercise was sitting at the stoplight in Stoneridge going, oh man, this is a drag, you know. And I go, this is my space. I'm the only one in the car. Nobody's telling me what to do. You know, nobody's telling me that I have to be frustrated and angry, that I have to wait. You know, why not bring in, this is my space. I can do whatever I want. You know, and I found that life is all sorts of opportunities to do that. You know, I was in the dentist chair, you know, and it was just because I've been practicing. I'm not great at it, and I still practice it. But a lot of it has to do with like letting annoyances go. But I could tell you a funny story just to kind of drive this point home. But the point I'm making is that those little steps that in that practice of trying to find your state of peace or of comfort, I found that because that became important and I started looking for this thing, I started finding all sorts of different ways of practicing that. And I carry that into my meditations today, and particularly during times of conflict. I mean, it doesn't have to be total peace. I feel that like if you can just kind of dial a little bit of peace into a conflicting situation, then you're doing what you need to be doing. I met this woman who was her wife is dying of brain cancer, and I said, "Wow, what's that like for her?" And she goes, "She's just so angry." And this woman was a therapist, and we started talking about it. And I said, we have our whole lives to practice, what we're going to need on our deathbed, or when we need in times, So, our time is better spent developing pathways and channels towards peace rather than fear.
Ellen is holding her hand up. We have 5 minutes. So what would you like to say in 5 minutes?
Well, I've been saying it, dear. I would say that, in every opportunity, whether it's this opportunity or if I have a chance to sit down and talk to some people, either just as they come to Lydia's. Right before coming, we had a chance to talk to our Airbnb guests, and she teaches yoga, and she's a corporate risk management. Just having these like really spontaneous, impromptu conversations. There's just a small window. There's a small window for me to speak, for us to speak, and whether it's here or whether it's like just a short conversation with somebody at Lydia's, I like to try to get into the what I consider the stuff that matters. I mean, it's fine to talk about trivial things, but to me it has to relate to something broader. It's like music. Music is a lot like communication. There's a theme. There's a soloist up there. He's trying to develop a narrative, and it's kind of like the job of the other musicians on stage to like listen to him and support him and help him articulate his idea, rather than just like waiting for him to be done so they can tell their stuff. Like we all line up these things that we feel is important, and we insinuate them into the conversation. So that's why I feel, that's why I like to kind of like cut to the bone if I see an opportunity to talk about things that I think are really important, which I was just talking about. I tend to like to do that. I could give a lot more narrative about other things, but I said essentially what I wanted to say, and I thank you for the opportunity.
And listen, you came representing Lydias in Stoneridge on 209, and can you say something like when do you offer dinner and breakfast, and how does that go?
Yeah, well, Wesley's Way Cafe is doing breakfast and lunch Tuesday through Sunday, killer breakfast and lunch from 7 till 2. And then currently Lydias Cafe, myself and my wife Ronnie and Celine, our bartender, are doing Saturday nights live music. If you like music, if you appreciate music, this is the place. If you like, to get weird, that's the place. We like, I like meeting people. I like to have conversation. It's a good thing. It's a great place. I wish more people were coming, but if anybody's watching, come on down to Lydia's.
I think it's
All
a
right.
lovely opportunity, and I hope that everyone will venture out to Lydia's.
I do too.
And get to know our host and enjoy a wonderful meal. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
And thank you, Miss Ellen. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.